Early in the book, you share a story about being the starting quarterback for Centerville High School at the age of 14 years old, which is
Yeah.
insane to me. But if you could go back in time and talk to 14-year-old Ryan, what final score do you tell him to measure and which one matters?
So the advice to your younger self question is a little tough because there's no chance I would have listened. I had people coming back and telling me things that they.
What do you mean by differentiating between the two scoreboards that run our lives?
Yeah. So Warren Buffett has this great quote about the internal and external. He called them scorecard. We just switched it to scoreboard, but
Yeah.
the internal versus the external or the outer scoreboard. I think it's really easy, especially today.
What is your advice on how someone can avoid the poison of comparison?
It's always going to be there a little bit. But I think if you're trying to focus more on your work and create systems to do that. So I mentioned earlier,
when you're reviewing footage of your own performance from podcasting, speaking engagements, even writing, just talking about fatherhood, husband, dad, friend, what kind of things do you look out for and or pick out for improvement?
that's a great one. So I do like to enlist.
But of all the stories in your life, if you could hear a life story told from your children's perspective, which life story do you think would be most interesting to hear how they tell it?
I mean, when it comes from their eyes,
Ryan, do you have any follow-up questions for me?
well, I very much appreciate your level of preparation. I think that's the ultimate form of showing love and respect. And so I don't take that for granted. That means a lot. So thanks, Martin, for that. I appreciate that. And this second one should have been first, but I am so in debt to people like you and others who decide the more selfless act of serving our country. I don't take that for granted.
This is a big time for me. You, thank you so much, first and foremost. You have no idea how much this means to me. The fact,
Nice.
and by the way, I already hit record just because lessons learned from past episodes. I've forgotten to hit record on some big time interviews, so I just
All
erased.
good.
But
Smart.
yeah, man, to say that I'm a fan of your work. I'm active duty military, but I follow you, and I've applied lessons from you to my actual leadership style. And
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thank you for your service, dude. That's amazing.
yeah, I appreciate that. It's I'm 42 years old, and if my math is right, you're either 41 or 43. I think we're a year apart in some form or fashion.
42.
Right? Yeah, I realize now the importance of peer mentorship, and mentorship's a big thing in the military, but people always think probably same thing when you're working at LexisNexis. When someone says, "Hey, Ryan, you need to find a mentor," people are probably thinking it had to be someone within your company or your department. They wouldn't think that you would need to go like now. I think it's awesome. Like Brook Cupps is a mentor of your, right? Like no one would ever tie you guys together. Like if someone asks, "Hey, Ryan, who's your mentor?" Oh, a high school basketball coach, right? But he's so
Yeah.
much more than that.
Yeah.
But same for me. People thinking in the military, like your mentors always have to be someone senior ranking or in your vicinity. The value of peer mentorship from someone outside of your really your domain. And then also I have people who are much younger than me that I consider mentors as well. And the value in that is priceless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where are you located?
I'm in Dayton. I'm here at Right Pat.
Oh, cool. Have you been like shipped all over the place? Like,
Yeah.
what's your setup? Yeah.
Yeah. So
You're Air Force guy.
I am. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, 21 years. It's so crazy because I consider Dayton my home now. And this city
Nice.
has opened me with open arms. And I've been here for about 3.5 years. Well, this is
Okay.
my second time stationed here. I chose to come back here. I was stationed here from 2012 to 2016. And the city was just so great to me. And I was stationed
Nice.
in Hawaii from 2016 to July 2020. I had to leave, but my family and I chose to come back to Dayton. And it's been
Hawaii, man. You chose to leave Hawaii.
well, we
Why?
had to.
Oh,
Like
you had to.
my time was up there. But
How was it?
oh, amazing. It's
Okay.
everything.
Because
Um,
it seems glamorous, but sometimes it's not. So I'm curious. Like, I know there's different parts of Hawaii too. It's not all the exact same. I played a game there, and I remember thinking, "Wow, this is actually a big city here, where our
yeah,
hotel was." And I mean, kind of a big city. I just wasn't expecting an actual city at all. I was just thinking about beaches and hotels and restaurants, and there
yeah,
was people full on working and doing
yeah.
it like any other city. Which surprise, I get it depends on where you go, but that was a little jarring initially for me.
Yeah, the traffic's horrible. I mean, it could
Yeah.
take you, just for reference, it took me, I lived 11 miles from where I worked, but it would take me 55 minutes to drive there. So think of like DC type traffic. I mean, it's insane.
So you're on like the big island, the main island, like where Honolulu and everything was. Is that where you were?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Oahu, but
Yeah.
I think there was over, when you count all the tourists, there's over 1 million people on island at any given time, but it's
Yeah.
only really built for like 300,000. So it'd be
Yeah.
like trying to cram basically 1 million people into Dayton,
Yeah.
right? And it was nuts. And then it was expensive.
Yeah.
So just for even for context, one of the benefits of the military is you get, if you live off base, you get a housing allowance, but if you live on base, but it's so like uh and I get why, but the military, you don't necessarily get, like, it's not going to match what the market, right?
Yeah.
So you may get 12 to $1,300 a month, but if you
Yeah.
have a family of five, that's going to be tough, right?
Yeah.
But there, because it's so expensive there, I was getting $3,500 a month. Now in Dayton, I mean, that's a mansion, right? In
Oh,
Hawaii.
maybe it used to be. I
Oh, it
don't
used to
think
be,
it
yeah,
still
yeah.
is.
But in Hawaii, so it's a lot of money, but all it, like, the biggest we could afford, or like what it went toward, and we still paid out of pocket, was a 3 bedroom, 1,600 square foot, 2.5 uh 2 story, like, basic house, right? So
Yeah.
nothing like, whereas here you could probably get 3,000 square feet, or 4 bathrooms, something like that. But I loved it. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life, and I never
Mhm.
really lifted weights. It was just kayaking and swimming and hiking, and I would do sprints on the beach. Just, if you ever see my calves, you'll know, you'll appreciate them. But yeah,
Good for
but
you, man.
it was great.
Well, it's good. It's probably good for you. How old are your kids? Like, what are the ages?
My daughter's 12,
Yeah.
but if you ever see me around town, she's taller than me, which is crazy. And
How
then
tall is that?
5'8".
Wow. Good.
Yeah,
That's cool. What school? Where does she go to school?
we're in Beaver Creek, so she goes to middle school right now. And
Cool.
then my son, he's 5, but he'll be 6 next week. He's in kindergarten in Beaver Creek as well.
Nice. Very
Yeah,
cool. That's awesome, man. Good for you. That's really cool to hear too that you wanted to come back here. So what do you
yeah.
do in the military?
Uh, uh, I'd love to talk to you in person. We could probably talk more about all the different cool things that I do, but because
Okay.
of my job and my position, I've been in for over 21 years.
Wow.
Um, and I lived in northern Japan for 5 years, and
Oh
I mean,
my gosh.
yeah, it was great. I started snowboarding, and this is pre-social media, so I mean, it really, I was 21 years. I'm sorry, I had just turned 22 when my
Mhm.
wife and I moved to Japan, and that was in January of 2004. So I mean, like, smartphones weren't really a thing yet, but they were about to be. My wife and I, we couldn't just call home. We had to use Skype. Wasn't even necessarily a thing yet. We had to use Vonage, like a paid for, or calling cards back then, if we wanted to call mom and dad.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was stationed in California, in the Central Coast, about an hour from Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And
Jeez.
then I came here for about 4 years. I was in Kuwait for 14 months. So I count that as an assignment. Yeah, but one of the best, like, I turned that into one of the best experiences of my life. There's so many things that really, kind of the genesis of what I'm doing now, probably could be traced back to when I was deployed, is the term, deployed in the Middle East.
Mhm.
Um, and then I so during my 4 years, that's when I broke off and went to Kuwait for 14 months, and then came back to Dayton. Um, Met a mutual friend of ours. I don't know who super well, but Katie Kinney. I met her. We were in a contest. She knows your brother
Yeah,
real well. They graduated high school together.
we did
Uh,
actually. Katie and I were are the same age. We graduated together.
oh, and
Yeah,
then what year did you graduate high school?
2000.
I did as well. I thought you were an '01 grad. Okay.
No, AJ's '02. I'm 2000, and Katie was. Yeah, she was. I mean, she dated Scott Kenny, who
Yeah,
she
yeah.
now is her husband, while we were in high school. So, yeah, one of the few who still with the person they dated in high
That's
school. So,
awesome.
yeah, she's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, they're both great.
Yeah, I briefly met him, but her and I met through the Dayton CW contest, which was a local like entertainment. And actually that's how she was on Living Dayton because of that contest and eventually turned that to her news role. But this
Oh,
isn't
cool.
yeah, this is in 2013. But her and I, because at the time we're competing against all these 20-year-olds, and her and I think we're 31 or 32 at the time.
Okay.
Um and then anyway, so left Dayton, went to Hawaii, one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I wouldn't trade that for anything. The food, the weather, the activities, the culture, and I'm also an actor, so I was able to
Oh,
get into a
really?
lot. Yeah, I was able to get into a lot of acting roles out there. Magna PI, Hawaii Five O.
Really?
Yeah, a couple movies. I did a movie called Triple Frontier. It came out during COVID, so it went straight to Netflix. But it has Ben Affleck, Pedro Pascal, Charlie Hunman, who played Jax on Sons of Anarchy. Uh, I mean, I got to meet Ben Affleck and hang out with him. Um, got into acting out there. It was great. Moved back here, and we've
Yeah.
been here since August of 2020. And we're looking to permanently, at least, plant some roots here and retire initially.
Oh, nice. Because you technically you can retire when you're after 20 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I I was recently I was promoted in August of 2022,
Yeah.
and because of that, I have to serve a little bit longer because of
Okay.
my new rank. But
Nice.
um, but I was also like last year I got to go to uh travel all over the world, Australia, and meet cool people.
Yeah.
So I love the military. I tell people if someone's in a rut, if you want a life hack, just join the military. I mean, it's just the people or do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, my wife's two brothers are both military guys. So one Air Force, one Army, and actually her brother in the Army just they're both overseas and at the moment, and one of them because you probably saw what happened in I believe it was
yeah,
Jordan.
Jordan. Yeah,
Yeah, he's gone to they're moving him to he's flying there. I think he might already be there. So we were like, wow, that's intense stuff to think about. So they've been military guys for I guess right after high school. So it's been a while, but yeah, man, I just hold you guys in the highest of esteem and regard, putting country first and selflessness. And obviously you get some stuff out of it too, but still, making that commitment and long-term commitment in your case and a lot of the people's cases who do it is just like there's not really anything in comparison with that. So I'd like to say if I wasn't playing football in college and tried to play after college that I would have done it, but I didn't do it. So there's no point even saying that. So I just hold you in the highest of regards and appreciate that there are a lot of people like you that are willing to do it. Because if not, our country would be much different, not nearly as good. I know we have our own issues like everybody,
yeah.
but still without guys like you and girls like you, it wouldn't be nearly as good as it is.
Thank you for saying that for the kind words. I could 100% see you in the military. I know if you were in the military, I already know what rank you would be.
I don't know. The long distance running would have killed me. I don't know, man.
It's really you just got to run a mile and a half. Well, it's a mile and a half for time, but if you were to join the Air Force, I can't speak for the other branches, but I can already.
I'm sure you could gut it out, but man, some of those long distance running. I always passed our test, but God, it was never fun. It was like the worst part of all football stuff for me was, all right, what's the conditioning? Oh my God, are you serious? And it was always because a quarterback, you can't fail the conditioning test, So like,
Yeah.
I thought about that way more than people probably would realize. Like, how much did I think about our high school and college conditioning test of doing whatever? Like, I never, ever, ever, ever missed a summer workout. one, because you got to show up, that's part of leadership, but two, because like I just didn't want to fail those tests. I'm like, I got to get every workout in possible in order to pass that test. There were some guys who literally could just show up after a summer of golf and swimming and whatever, chasing girls, and just pass the test. And
I hate those people.
I don't know if I hate him. I'm just envious of that. Maybe it's like, that was not me, man. Yeah, like the mile times, the 21:10s for time, like all of it was a battle every single time, man. I was so productively paranoid to pass those tests that I kind of would do whatever it takes to hit the times. It's funny.
You would be amazing, and like for you, because I joined because of 9/11, and I waited in line for 5 hours on September 12th. The line did not budge, and I'm originally from Oklahoma. So
wow. Are you serious? So you went straight. Wait. So would you have been like a freshman in college?
Yeah. So I was in college, and obviously, and it's that's why I appreciate you, because I've read. Let me just show you real quick. By the way, I printed out the PDF version, the two chapters that you had on your website for the book.
Cool.
So and you can see some of my notes. I don't know if that's.
I got you. Yeah.
And then this is when I read The Pursuit of Excellence. I have pages of notes from your book.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you have those like as a in digital, or are they just handwritten?
Handwritten, but I can take screenshots.
Well, one of the things, not to make it about me, but I do find a lot of value in seeing what resonates with thoughtful leaders.
Yeah.
So that's why when I see notes like that, I'm curious to read them, because it helps me understand. Because when you write the full thing, you just don't know what's going to hit. Like I already doing some of the podcasts for this next book, I'm surprised at some of the questions. Like, oh, okay, that's cool that story hit, or that was memorable enough to bring up within this hour. And so I do think I find it helpful to see what resonates with thoughtful leaders. And so I like reading the notes or the highlights or that. So not to put extra homework on you, but I would be curious to read some of the things that, like, I remember Brook, speaking of Brook Cupps, he sent me his highlights and notes from my first two books. And that was super. I mean, I hold him in, again, very high regard and view him as a serious mentor of mine. And so that was really, I didn't ask him to do that. He just did it and sent him to me. I'm like, wow, this is super helpful for me to see what resonates with a really great leader like him. So I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pursuit of Excellence. I'm not sure if you can read it because I added a blur filter to my camera, but I mean, this book is just full of highlights and everything.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I would absolutely type it up, and I would love to buy you lunch sometime, even if it was something on base, to just kind of give you a feel for the military base. But I did the same thing for Todd Henry for Die Empty, and I have like 15 pages of notes from his book, but he's
awesome. God, I love Todd. Man, is he good.
And I'm going to tie that in when we actually start. I have a whole intro that we haven't even gotten to yet, but I met him at a formal military ball. He was the guest speaker at a ball I went to in October 2020. Never heard of this guy at the time. And initially I was thinking, I remember telling my friend, I'm like, who's this knockoff Simon Sinek guy? And I've told
Did you tell him that?
Yeah. When we, and then afterwards, I mean, everyone's like applauding him. I mean, I was just like blown away. And his speech was about Die Empty.
Yeah.
And I mean, I went out and bought the book or ordered it on Amazon the next day. And then I read it like in a matter of 2 weeks or whatever it was. And then I think in maybe April, it took about 4 months. I started hitting him up in January, emailing him. And then finally, I took all the notes that I had, I took pictures of them, and then emailed them to him and said, "Hey man, I'm a big fan of your work. Whatever I think I said something along the lines like, no one's gonna be more prepared to interview you than me." And and then we did the podcast, and the very first question I asked him was a story he references when he was 16 years old. He writes about it in Die Empty. It's about when he was in the hospital, and I around this time, this is when I discovered you, and I took a lesson from you and applied it to his book because I went immediately. Now it's how I read books. The very first thing I do is go back and I start with the acknowledgments in the back, right?
For sure.
And yeah, and so anyway, I referenced the story about when he was in the hospital when he was 16 and all these different things. And there, in the video podcast, it's actually the hook. It's like the first 30-second intro because he was like shocked, kind of how Ed Mylett did with you when he was like, "Brother, no one's ever asked me that before."
Yeah.
Because Todd like stumbled, he was like, oh, he's like, "That's funny. No, I've written about that. No one's ever asked me that," and it was one of my most proudest moments that. But anyway, I sent him the notes. I would love to do the same.
Yeah.
Brooke was on my episode for last summer, maybe in August. It might have been in August, episode 35. And same thing. I showed the notes I had from Surrender, the outcome, and uh, and Brooke I recorded in person at a podcast studio here in Dayton. But yeah, I've big fan of your work, and it really just kind of resonated with me recently because I forget your episode numbers now. I still remember them, but there's so many of your episodes now, right? But you had
Oh yeah.
Alex Hormozi on,
Yep.
and but basically, he talks about like if you want 10 times the if you want 10 times the results or 10 times the work gives you 10 times the result, you have to 10 extra results or whatever. Or man, I'm drawing a blank now, but basically, 10 extra output will give you 10 times the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that stuck with me.
Yeah, episode 540. Hormozi's that was a fun conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Good dude. I actually admire Alex's team because they go out and I talked to his kind of chief of staff. I don't know if that's her official title.
Yeah.
But I asked her, I'm like, what's his process for deciding? He was promoting a book, but what's his process for deciding which podcast to go on? And he actually has people on his team go and listen to podcasts. And I'd send him cold emails like I send cold emails to a lot of people. And if it's written well, they'll go and listen and see if the host does proper preparation and research on their guest. And if so, then that's when they say yes. And so that was a good signal as well, like you're saying, of his team listened and said, yeah, you want to do this one because the guy will do the proper amount of preparation so that it'll be a good conversation. And then afterwards he was very kind. So I think it's good. You know how this is, man. Like, this is hard. It's awesome and it's fun. And it's the coolest job in the world. But it is also nice when you get some of that positive reinforcement from people who are very impactful and have helped a lot of others, that they say, hey, you're doing it right. You're doing it the right way. Your prep, you found that interesting story that nobody's ever asked me about and die empty, like Todd Henry says, or Ed Mylett in his dad's note cards, which still surprises me because it's right in his book. It's not like it's that hard to find. You just have to actually read the book. But
yeah,
I don't know. But maybe that's the thing. Maybe people buy books, they don't read them. I don't know. But I found that the prep is part of the fun. You ever see those videos about Peyton Manning and he took every rep in practice. He loved watching film. Like, he loved the kind of Monday to Saturday night work leading into the game day. And that was part of the fun for him. I view it the same way. I think the preparation, the reading, the note taking, the stuff you do when it's really quiet and you're on your own, it's like the Muhammad Ali quote, like, you only see what happens when I dance under the lights, but what happens in the darkness is what really matters most, of how I prep and prepare for the big fights in his case, or in our case, the big speeches or the big interviews. And to me, like, I think the work that goes into it is part of the fun. That's part of the thing that I just want. I want to keep doing it. And so the reward for great work is the opportunity to do more. So anyway, I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, man, I don't know if we've officially started or not. Doesn't matter. Maybe you just go with this, but this is, I appreciate you, reaching out and having me on.
No, thank you for that. You talked about the preparation. When I was reading the book that's coming out in March, The Score That Matters.
Yeah.
There's a part in the book where, and I forget which chapter because I only have the first two printed out, and I didn't want to print out the latest. You were so kind to send me the PDF version, and I didn't want to share that with anyone because I didn't want that like impacting potential sales. But I took some manual notes. But you talked about maybe it was your senior year where Centerville was 8-0, or
Yeah.
at one point, and you guys were playing Wayne, the other undefeated school.
Yeah.
And the school paper or the local paper interview you, and you were just nonchalant, like, yeah, as long as we've been preparing all week, as long as we do what we know we were capable of, we'll win. And then you guys won 35-14. When Wayne thought they were going to be in your head specifically, and the players at a fun football game a couple weeks later or whenever that was mentioned to you, like, hey, that really shook us, Ryan, the starting quarterback, when you were just like, yeah, we're going to be fine as long as we keep doing what we've been practicing. The preparation, right?
Yep. Yeah. That was a fun. That was a fun time. I think that was written in the chapter about. I think too often we may focus. I mean, the whole book is about focusing on yourself versus comparing yourself to other people and your own internal scoreboard. And I think it actually has this added benefit in that case where you are competing against other people that we truly weren't thinking about them. We watched film on them, but they were just jerseys and numbers to us. They weren't Wayne or this undefeated team that had 9 guys with Division I scholarships, multiple ones going to Ohio State, and a number of them ended up playing in the NFL. And it was just that's number 11 or that's number 92, and to us we're focusing on us. We're focusing on executing our offense, our defense, our special teams.
Yeah.
That's the focus. And I think there's so much to be learned from that in your regular life outside of playing football, is focus on what you do each and every day consistently. And I tried to break it down as a quarterback because it can be a daunting task. And when I would literally be so nervous on Fridays, but I would think, what is my job? My job is to execute our offense, right? And do my job with excellence, as perfect as I can. And then on top of that, it's to help make sure our team is in the right position to also execute as a whole. So when I broke it down to the smaller parts, I felt much more at ease, much more prepared. I can do this. I've been doing this all along. And I do the same thing when I'm like getting ready for a big speech with 1,000 people. It's like, execute the opening. Right. Once you get into the groove of the opening of getting going, you've done this. You've done this hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah.
You'll get into the flow. And so it's like breaking it down into a smaller component part, whatever the thing is, has been been really helpful. But none of that has anything to do with anybody else. That has to do with my work, my prep, me executing. And then the rest typically follows. But that story then seemed to be intimidating when I never even thought of that. That wasn't even part of my equation, that it could intimidate the other team. It was just the truth. And they loved when people wore the Beat Wayne sweatshirts, or they said Beat Wayne, or they loved that because it showed that we were thinking about them. And so I end that section saying, why do that? Why do that? Like we live in Ohio, and you're not originally from Ohio, but you understand the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. It's
man,
why do you cross out the M's or say beat Michigan? Just focus on yourself, your team, executing with excellence each and every day in practice, and then show up on the field and do it. I think the obsession with Michigan is weird. I mean, and I know people in Ohio, they hate me saying this. They hate this. They love this obsession. They love having somebody to hate. I don't know. I just view it differently, and I know I'm in the huge minority in that case. But to me, it's like, focus on your stuff and your work and your execution. I think the results will typically take care of themselves. Brook Cupps is a great example of that. Speaking of another person in real life who's actually doing it. So anyway, I probably could go on forever about this stuff, but that's overall how I view it.
I did have a couple questions, and I was going to save this for later, but this lines up perfectly. Early in the book, you share a story about being the starting quarterback for Centerville High School at the age of 14 years old, which is insane to me. But if you could go back in time and talk to 14-year-old Ryan, what final score do you tell him to measure, and which one matters?
So the advice to your younger self question is a little tough because there's no chance I would have listened. I had people coming back and telling me things that they, you know, hey, it's going to go by so fast. Embrace your teammates, love your guys, and we roll our eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were tired. We just wanted to eat, you know, like we weren't thinking about that. So I think of that now as a dad. It's like, yeah, I say these things, but they're tired. They want to eat. They want to go talk to their friends, whatever. However, assuming I would have listened, I would have said, like, kind of be grateful for what you have. Like, you have amazing coaches, phenomenal teammates. Your parents love you so much. Your brothers are so supportive. I just kind of took it for granted. It was just because it was normal. It was normal. So I didn't really think about being grateful. I didn't think about how lucky I was. I just was trying to kind of live each day and do a good job. And I didn't focus enough on building relationships. I was more selfish and arrogant. And I would say, dude, why don't you try to be a better teammate? Why don't you try to do a better job of connecting with guys, of connecting with people, other than just thinking about yourself all the time? And so maybe that just comes with age and maturity. And but I don't know. I go and talk with high school kids, and I'm amazed at how good they are at some of this stuff. People talk about the fact that they're all on their phones and they don't pay any attention. Yeah, maybe some of that's true, but in my experience, these younger people seem so more far advanced when it comes to all of the things I wasn't good at, like relationship building, like thinking long term, like all of that. And I'm amazed by that, and I'm inspired by that. I think that bodes well for our future. So I don't know. I guess those are some of the things I would have said. I probably wouldn't have listened, but I would have hoped maybe some of that would have gotten through.
No, I appreciate that. And I thought that was an interesting story in the book. But I agree with you. I think young people today are underestimated. And you mentioned, like, people think like their heads in their phones. And I see this in the military at big meetings or roll calls or whatever we call them. When someone say like, oh, these people are looking at their phones. Well, they're taking notes. That's how people take notes now. Like, they're typing their notes on a notes app versus actually having a pen and paper. And also, I think people today are more aware and better at emotional IQ compared to when we were coming up.
Yeah,
but
I think so. In
the score that matters, it reveals whether we are living in alignment with our purpose and values. It also measures how we are leading ourselves and others, prompting us to differentiate between the two scoreboards that run our lives, use our fear as fuel, avoiding the poison of comparison, embracing the mundanity of excellence, regulating our emotional thermostat, and creating a mentality for attacking diversity. I wanted to ask you, what do you mean by differentiating between the two scoreboards that run our lives?
Yeah. So Warren Buffett has this great quote about the internal and external. He called them scorecard. We just switched to the scoreboard, but the internal versus the external, or the outer scoreboard. I think it's really easy, especially today, with social media, makes it very easy to see what is happening and to make comparisons to other people's lives. You see the highlight reels of other people all the time. And so it's natural when you see that to make comparisons to other people's lives, but you're not seeing the full picture. You're only seeing some of the highlights. The internal scoreboard is more about focusing on yourself and your core values and the behaviors that match to align with those, and getting very clear and living in alignment with those behaviors and values. And so that's why there are exercises and ideas throughout the book to help you get very clear on that and then live in alignment with it, versus the outer scoreboard, where it seems to be more materialistic, comparison with others, always being a little bit upset or even sad, because when you compare your regular everyday life to the highlight reels of other people, there's just no chance that it's going to feel good in most cases. Because if you look at my social media, I mean, it's primarily the things that I'm doing with my podcast, but even the occasional things I post, they're highlight reel moments of my life. They're not the boring parts or the really bad parts or any of that. So if you compared, you'd say, oh my God, like, this is amazing. He's on this stage with all these people, or him and his family doing this fun thing. Well, that's like 1/20th of my life or more. So I'm not posting any of the things that are tough or really sad or really hard. Most people don't. And that's the problem is I think if you're living for the external scoreboard or the validation of other people, you're probably never going to fully measure up. You're never going to feel content, and you're going to be so distracted, aiming at the wrong things, as opposed to saying, okay, what are my core values? What are the behaviors that match? And then you create some prompts at the end of the day to ensure, like, what did I do today to be more thoughtful? What did I do today to be more thankful? What did I do today to be more consistent? What did I do today to be more curious? Those are my 4 core values, right? Thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent. So that's the prompt I can ask myself, as opposed to scrolling, seeing the highlights and being, oh my God, my life's boring or terrible. No, it's just a series of prompts to say, what did I do today to be a little bit wiser going to bed than I was when I woke up, right? The Charlie Munger quote. So that's more what I think living by the internal scoreboard means to me.
Couple things on that. Oh, one, kind of going back to an earlier conversation when we were talking about your second book, The Pursuit of Excellence. One of the things that really resonated with me was, I think the quote's at the end of the book, but you're referencing Grandpa Dean. It says, we're going to honor the present. And I read your book last year. Am I misquoting that? Is that correct?
What's that?
Did I get that quote correct? Like, we're going to honor the present?
That's from my dad. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, from your dad. I apologize.
That's okay.
But that is something that is just stuck.
I mean, my grandpa probably said it too. I don't know, but I've heard it from my dad. So anyway.
Yeah, but anyway, that's just something that just stuck with me. And speaking of highlight reels, you talk about people don't see the work. You talked about Muhammad Ali. People don't see, and the score that matters. There's a story about your brother AJ. Any football fan knows who AJ is, but the coaches talked about they were used to seeing him the day after a game at 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is in the weight room, right?
Yeah.
People to see the Saturday result when he's getting 2 sacks and 10 tackles or whatever.
Yep. People
see you do these interviews, and your highlight reel, I've been following you for the past year, and it's crazy. I mean, it's nonstop of every single guest. Like, Ryan, no one never's asked me that. That's an amazing question. That's actually how I found you. Was your highlight reel was your podcast. There was a clip with you and Ed Mylett, and you asked him a question about the scorecards, and he had mentioned, and he's done hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews at this point. And he said no one's ever asked him that, but that really kind of motivated me. But it shows the work that you had put in.
Yeah, I think that stuff can apply to anything. It also helps to really love what you're doing and love the process of preparing. I feel super lucky that I get to do something that I love, almost all elements of it, especially the preparing part. And it also helps that as an athlete, some people are born good enough where they can show up and just roll out the ball and dominate. And then others, like most of us, are born where you have some of that, but if you're not putting in the work each and every day, you aren't going to be able to do very well. And I learned specifically about work ethic from Bob Gregg and Ron Ullery about what it takes to be excellent. And those guys lifted me to levels that I didn't think I was capable of. So one great lesson there, it's the power of what great leaders can do for others, that they can lift people to perform at levels they didn't think themselves that they were capable of. The cool part about that is, since I learned that in my formative years from age, like you said, 14 to 18, I can draw from that in everything that I do. And you mentioned about preparing for a podcast. I actually don't think it's that hard to read Ed Mylett's book, take a lot of notes, and then ask him some questions about interesting parts of the notes. In this case, it happened to be about his dad who had died, the note cards that he had found in his dresser.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when he responded, "Brother, nobody's ever asked me that before." I'm like, "Ed, it's right in your book, man. Like, it's right there. I know I'm not the first interview. You've done tons of these."
Yeah.
So to me, it's almost like, wow, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit validating in that moment. This is why you prepare, because it shows deep respect for your guest. But I just love that element of it. Like, I love the prep process. I think it's fun. I enjoy the quiet time. I remember where I was. I was on the elliptical. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I was reading that book on the Kindle app on my iPad. in the movie theater at Club 51 where I was working out that day, and I read that part of the book and just took a note, just wrote down the note on my phone about Ed's dad's note cards. Then it popped up as we were talking, and it became a pivotal moment in the show. So, but that was literally in the dark because it's a movie theater part of that gym where they turn the lights off and just have a movie playing. But that was I think indicative of just how I try to approach the work, and that's part of why the show has grown and become the foundation of my business.
The over preparation, does that stem from your fear, and you're turning that fear into fuel?
Yeah.
In the form of, and I say over preparing as a compliment, because I think that shows a lot of professionalism and just makes the conversation more impactful. But yeah.
I mean, I really identify with Jim Collins's productive paranoia, great by choice. I think I have a lot of that with everything I do, before whether it's a keynote speech or whatever. I think I have one next Thursday that, it's on my mind kind of all the time. So I know that could be a rough thing, but that's because I want to do an excellent job. There's gonna be 500 people there. It's their entire company, it's their offsite, and I want to do a great job. So productive paranoia is very real, and it's helpful for me. There's also downsides to that because I am thinking about it a lot, not just during the 9 to 5 working hours. It's always on my mind, the big thing, and there's always big things on the calendar. So yeah, I think being over prepared is just part of what I feel like I have to do in order to show respect, either for my audience if I'm speaking, or my guest if I'm doing a podcast. And ultimately, I think it's very disrespectful to show up for either a speech or a podcast or whatever you're doing and not be prepared. I think that's the ultimate form of letting somebody know that you care for them, that you love them, in a sense, that you show up by having done the work leading up to that moment. So I try to do that.
No, it's good. I've actually started gifting your book, The Pursuit of Excellence, to friends of mine that I mentor, that I could see.
Thank you.
There's a lot of valuable lessons.
That's amazing, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Again, there's so many gems, and the list of the people you're acknowledging in the back. Actually, let me look at my notes real quick. Yeah, it's quite a few. It's a lot. But either way, one thing you talk about, the score that matters, and something I've been guilty of in the past, but I've really learned to give myself grace and appreciate and clap for others. But so I've been guilty. What I have, the comparison is a thief of joy.
Yep.
What is your advice on how someone can avoid the poison of comparison?
It's always going to be there a little bit. But I think if you're trying to focus more on your work and create systems to do that. So I mentioned earlier about like prompts and journaling. I love questions. I'm a questions-based writer. So I hire a writing coach who spends a lot of time asking me questions. And then I respond to those questions, sometimes literally in an email, whether it's on my phone or on the computer, in a way that it feels more like a one-on-one conversation. And then those end up as in my books. But if you ask questions of yourself to answer each day, that could keep you focused. Because I know I'm going to ask myself those questions. I'm going to ask about living in alignment with my core values at the end of the day. What did I do to be thoughtful today? Specifically, like in a specific action, what did I do to exemplify a curious person today? And write that out, like write those answers. So more focused on your actions, what's most important to you, and living in alignment with those things just shifts the focus away from mindless scrolling and looking at others, because most of it does come from that, I think, or even thinking about them. You're just much more focused on what you're doing. And I think by leading yourself first, that gives you the best chance to lead other people. So create those prompts for you, create some sort of a journaling process, or at least some sort of reflection process each day, and do it consistently. I think the chances of you comparing yourself to others will go down because you're more focused inward on what you're doing and on what you value, and are you living in alignment with those values? That I think that gives you a better chance of not that comparison with others piece.
Two of your core values are thoughtful and thankful. The
Yep.
mantra for thoughtful is be still. The mantra for thankful is care deeply.
Yep.
For those two specifically, can those be traced back to when I call it the parking lot dad? Because you've referenced this in a couple different episodes where I don't know if you're at your daughter's practice or something, but right, you talked about the guy, and I think you shared this in episode with Brook Cupps back in December.
Yep.
But you have mentioned a couple times anyway, and it's actually referenced in the book as well. But again, can those two core values and mantras specifically be traced back to that moment?
I think that's a good moment. I mean, I'm walking, listening to podcasts in my AirPods, and I see another dad who I, kind of know, never really socialized with him, but you see him at the events with your kids, and good guy. And yeah, I mean, these are the guys that sometimes you need those reminders where I was just complaining, right? I was complaining. I was doing what we do when we have those types of conversations where I was kind of mindlessly complaining. Oh my God, we're Uber drivers for kids. We just had to stay at a hotel at the tournament that lasted. It was terrible, all this stuff. And he's just like, dude, what else are you going to do? This is like what we're doing. He's like, my son just went to, in his case, he said, my son went to college last year and it's far away. It's not drivable. It's a flight. I don't see him anymore. Like I'll see him when he comes home over break. Other than that, like I don't see him, and he's doing his own thing now. He's like, your daughter's about to turn 16, and that opens up a whole nother door of freedom for her that gets her away from you. And you're going to miss this stuff, man. Like these are the good old days. And so I sometimes just to be smacked in the face by a random dude in a parking lot to be more present with what you have going on. And so I try to enjoy every single one of those car rides, especially now I'm sitting shotgun while I'm teaching them to drive. They have their temps and try to enjoy every one of those trips to Dunkin' to get an iced coffee, or every one of those trips this weekend to watch a football game at a sports bar, where you're sitting side by side, which I found is a better way to do it with a teenager, because it's more like open and free flowing than if you're face to face. And so like try to embrace each and every one of those moments, because like, boom, they're gone, dude. Like they're going to be gone. And so I think I've become more present because I've gotten advice from others who have gone through what I'm going through, and I see how much they miss it. And I want to look back in a few years and be like, I kind of gave everything I had to be present in those moments, and realize that I was in the good old days when I was in the good old days. And so sometimes I'll even use that as like a hashtag for myself. It's more for me than anything. Like, on a snow day a couple weeks ago with my youngest Charlie, who's 9, and we're building, like we tried to build an igloo. It was freezing cold, and we're out there with a couple of our friends, and we're just shoveling snow and packing this thing and building. But man, those are the good old days. We found a couple sleds. We found these tiny little hills. It was so fun. We're videoing it. We're, having so much fun. Those are the good old days, man. And so I just want to be as present as humanly possible for those times. And sometimes though, if we're not careful, we'll get too caught up complaining about the all the different things that we quote have to do as parents. And I think that's wrong. And but I was right in the middle of that, and just kind of need to regularly be snapped into place.
No, that's great. And that was even mentorship for me, just listening to multiple times that you've referenced that. I have a garage gym just because it's just time wise, it's just easier for me since my schedule is pretty packed. But yesterday I think it was around 4:00, and I told my wife, like, hey, I just need to get a quick workout in. I need to lift. And my son's 5. He said he wanted to lift with me. And and he came out
5-year-old lifting.
Yeah, I mean, he's
that's so cool.
Yeah, and I have a PVC pipe that he'll come out there from Lowe's or Home Depot, and he'll lift that. Then he tells my wife that he has to get. He told my wife, I'm sorry. He said, "Mommy, I got to get those gains."
Dude, that's awesome. 5 years old.
But it's just one of those memories that to be present in the moment, right? And
my dad had built a basement weight room. We were down there to my brother and I. We'd go down there with him, and listen to him. Like he would watch these Lee Haney videos. I don't know if you
Oh my
remember that
God.
guy.
Yeah.
Lee Haney and Mr. Olympia, and
Yeah.
they used to have these weightlifting shows on ESPN too, and we'd watch those early morning and then go down in the basement and start like doing upright rows and all lat pull down machine. I remember that was a big deal when we got that one, and I think those mornings helped kind of create a bit of a work ethic, and also seeing your dad do it, and we'd make fun of each other a little bit, but we'd have so much fun with it. And I think that's a cool thing you're doing. I think that's really good. That's going to have a long-term impact.
Even going back last summer, last July, as a matter of fact, I was working out in the front yard, just working on the flower bed, and it was hot outside. So I took off my shirt. Why wouldn't I? And I'm wearing sunglasses. I'm pulling weeds and whatnot. My son sees me do this, runs back inside, and he actually has a foam fake play school barbell, whatever. So he comes running outside with that, no shirt on, and he's standing in our front yard facing the street, and he's doing barbell curls with this little foam weight set, and he's wearing sunglasses while he was doing it. My wife was so like embarrassed. I'm like, no, this is he's showing the neighborhood what an alpha he is, and that's what life.
That's the best, dude. So cool. I love that.
I have a couple. I want to transition to a couple. I just miscellaneous questions, just different things from me following your podcast and your overall leadership. I mean, just everything about you, right? Your books and some of your speaking engagements, and you've talked to so many amazing people. I think the Admiral McCraven video might be my favorite, though, or it's going to be the Admiral McCraven episode.
So good, man.
And
He's
I think
amazing.
that I'm not sure how many times he's been on, so I'm referencing 20. Maybe it was May 2020. But that was just in general. But had as someone who played quarterback your whole life at a high level, you are accustomed to reviewing game tape and as a study and performance improvement tool. When you're reviewing footage of your own performance from podcasting, speaking engagements, even writing, just talking about fatherhood, husband, dad, friend, what kind of things do you look out for or pick out for improvement?
That's a great one. So I do like to enlist help of others to get outside perspective. I've already done it a few times during this conversation, but I tend to get excited and then long-winded. And so my favorite guests, the ones who I think are most impactful, are James Clear calls it the compression of ideas. And James is one of the best in the world at it, but they are able to compress their ideas much better than most. And I am not very good at that. And so typically when I look back at my own interviews or speeches, it's the fact that I failed to compress either the question or the idea as well as I probably could. So it's something I'm regularly thinking about. And I don't know why that I struggle with that. But it's usually out of kind of excitement, and then you just keep going. But that's probably one of the main things I'm looking for is, could I have asked that question using fewer words? Could I have answered that question using fewer words? When I was on stage and I look at how I told that story and the science and the practical application element of that bit, could I have done it in fewer words? And usually I can, and I don't. And so I think, it's something, it's a work in progress. I'm still working to get better at that, but definitely something I still struggle with.
Thanks for answering that. Do you have a few more minutes? Because I have a couple. Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, another favorite episode that I heard was with Paulina Pompliano. So I just got her book yesterday, and I'm gonna read that probably the next couple weeks or so. And switching gears, because one of the things I admire about you is it's kind of like you have like these different stages in a good way of your life. Like obviously you're a husband, you're a dad, you're a son, you're a brother, all these different things, but you played football and even college football, which is awesome. But like you're more than just an ex-college quarterback. You're more than just the top sales guy at the multi-billion-dollar company. You're an author. You are a leadership consultant and amazing podcaster, a writer, and I subscribe to your newsletter. So it's cool. Like there's just a lot of different ingredients that make up who you are, all bringing like their own interesting stories. But of all the stories in your life, if you could hear a life story told from your children's perspective, which life story do you think would be most interesting to hear how they tell it?
I mean, when it comes from their eyes, I mean, I've written my eulogy in the words as given by my youngest daughter, because I hope it's not said for a very long time, which I think is a great exercise, by the way, for everyone to do.
Yeah.
In her voice is how I write. I think you should write it in the voice of somebody that you love and that loves you. And so if I think about that eulogy that I've written that Charlie will one day give, it's almost all based upon being very present and kind and loving, first and foremost for them. So that's the story that I would hope they would tell. And so the reason why I think that's a good exercise is because when you write it, you're creating something for yourself to live up to. It's aspirational. It's not all necessarily fully true. But yes, in there, is it about putting her on the bus every morning at 8:06 and getting her off the bus every single day when I'm in town at 3:55? You know, I hope that's in there. Well, that means I got to do that when I'm in town, which is most of the times now because I'm very picky about travel for speaking. It's about going to the pool in the summer and launching her up high when she was young. It's just about being present for like actual conversations when we're eating Chipotle at home because it's rushed and it's crazy, and so we had to pick up food. But it's listening. It's knowing their friends' names, being engaged, asking them questions. All of the other stuff when it comes to my podcast, I hope it's inspiring in the fact that I was able to chase my curiosity and obsessions with great rigor. And by doing that, it's impacted people in a positive way. And they do get to see some of that impact. They hear about it, they see it, the conversations I have, the people they meet. That's part of that too. But it starts with them. And then secondarily, it starts with the fact that it is possible to go after something you're deeply curious and obsessed about and create a business that changes other people's lives and impacts them in a big way. And that's the story that I hope that they see. And I'm trying to live up to that each day.
No, that's amazing. And I totally agree because I love, there was always a thing when people say when their kid was born, they would write a letter every single week or every single day. And I know that's actually referenced. I think I read that you write letters to your kids each week, or something that you learned from Buzz Williams. But also there's people who open up email accounts and they'll send their kid an email.
Yeah.
Right. Or open an account for their kid, right, every single week.
I like that. Yeah.
I view podcasting as a different form of that, kind of a modern day form of that. Because one of the reasons I keep doing my podcast now, and I will continue to do it, is I'm leaving a legacy for my kids, so they can go back and listen to my voice. Or you talked about they can actually see the curiosity. And I had a good buddy of mine named Ian Eishan on my podcast back in September, and he talked about podcasting. It's great because it's a slice of moment in time. It's an artifact of time that that's something that just really just burned into my mind and stuck with me and just continues to motivate me.
Well, it's the other thing too that's cool. So I interviewed you probably know Clay Mathile. He's
Yeah.
He lived here in Dayton. He built his businesses. He sold a couple $1 billion. One of the wealthiest people here. He started. I think he wanted to leave an impact of leadership and entrepreneurship here. Well, I went to his office up at Aileron, which is an amazing place that he's built and funded the whole thing. And I sat in his office. I brought my top-notch film guys with me, and we filmed that conversation. And Clay died, I think it's been within the last 6 months. And so many members of his family have personally reached out and said, thank you so much for not only doing that, but also like filming it the way you guys did, because we now have watched that over and over since he's died. And we're so glad that that exists. And so you're creating these artifacts for yourself and for your own kids and for your family to go back and watch or listen to. But you're also doing it for others. You're doing it for these family members to go back and watch and have these memories of people that they love so much. And it is, it's super meaningful to get notes like that from family members of people who are no longer with us, and they're very grateful that, you know, he showed up with Kieran, because a lot of them would say that's the, you know, Clay's a multi-billionaire. He's done a zillion interviews. That's the best one we've ever seen.
Wow.
And so we go back and watch it over and over, and it's also was filmed beautifully, because I care about like the filming of it being excellent too. It's not just that, and I think that. I'm so glad that we made that decision to do it that way, when we could have done it cheap, or we could, like, we spent some money on that thing, but it's like so worth it now when you see the impact it has on so many people.
I had a good friend of mine. He died from cancer last year. His name is Heath Trepanier, but everyone calls him Trep. But he was given 6 months to. He was diagnosed with cancer in 2017. And he was given 6 months to live, and he lasted 6 years.
Jeez.
Right. Yeah. But and he was active duty Air Force, and he was part of the Air Force Wounded Warrior program. They took such great care of him and his family. So just a shout out to the Air Force Wounded Warrior program. In January of 2019, he came out to Hawaii. And at this point, my podcast was a year old. And he was like, hey, he just called me, everyone always calls me by my last name. He says, hey, Foster, I just want to do kind of deep on your podcast. And I was like, and this is someone I did 2 deployments with. And when you deploy with someone, he was with me in Kuwait for those 14 months. So when you're deployed with someone, there's just a bond that is I bet unbreakable. But we did the podcast, and I was like, hey, man, like, why'd you want to do this? And he was like, I want this for my kids so they can listen to this. And he passed away last year. But and I noticed through the website that I host my podcast, I get like the weekly stats or whatever. But the week after his death last year, there was probably over 100 new listens to that episode. And I hadn't really, at that point, I hadn't advertised it. That I didn't really I didn't share the post or think, hey, check out this podcast with Trep. I did later on, just to show people like, hey, let's honor him, because he had a great leadership message on there. But
that's amazing, man.
But yeah, and this is early last year. The episode is 4 years old, and all of a sudden, just randomly, it gets like over, in a matter of a week, 100 new downloads. So I like to think that maybe it just helped coping with some people, whether it was his family or close friends. But
oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. In a past Ask Me Anything podcast episode, you mentioned that you would like, this is completely random, by the way. We're going to take a hard right turn on a 675 or whatever it is that we're driving. But in a past Ask Me Anything podcast episode, you mentioned that you would like to be asked questions about music, and then want to discuss your love. Discuss your love of music. When did music enter the picture for you, and did you ever view music as an accessible goal?
Like me being a musician?
Yeah.
No, not that part of it. I love enjoying live music, especially. I started, my first concert was in middle school. I went with my dad to see Tom Petty. I was just, you like Tom Petty? I was blown away just by the craftsmanship of just how cool he was. I always said I'd go back. I'm like, I'll go back. I'll see him again, you know. And then he died, and it was like, hey, if you want to go see somebody in concert, don't screw around, just go. I've seen Dave Matthews Band probably over 60, 70 times by now. We started going when I was quite young. I love them. We were looking for a way to say thank you to all the supporters, and so I just hosted a concert. You know, there's no fundraiser or no presenting sponsor. It was just me with about 80 to 100 friends, supporters. Mark Robert's lead singer of O.A.R. We did it here in Dayton, and it was one of the coolest nights of the last decade of our lives. It was just so much love and fun, and you know, my book launch party, I'm bringing in a live band to be a part of it. It's going to be more about the music than about anything else. I'm not going to do much reading of a book. That's coming up here soon, and Brooks kind of said, "Hey, you can run with this," so I'm going to. Yeah, I just love I just love being with people, and I love artists, and I love people who have had the guts to write down their thoughts and create music out of nothing. I think it's amazing. I think it is so cool that people do that. And I don't have that real skill. And I'm focused on other things, so it's not like something I'm trying to develop, but I don't need to. But I just so appreciate the artists who do that. So yeah, we make it a point to go see live music as much as possible, and to just embrace the vibe of being with people you love, listening to cool music. I just think that is an amazing experience. And a lot of my most enjoyable nights have been with music and with people I love. I got together with a group. We took like one of those Sprinter vans last summer to an O.A.R concert in Cincinnati, and it was with some of my buddies that I don't get to see enough. Like we all have kids and crazy stuff going on, like you know how it goes.
Yeah.
And it was just one of the best nights of the year. And we just sat there and said, like, man, we got to do this more. And the cause of that was a live show. And so I'm just a big fan, one, of artists who have the guts to do that. I love seeing them perform it. I just love being in that arena with people who do it. And so when I mentioned the live music thing, like, yeah, I could talk about music or things like that probably forever, but it's to me, it's just about the art and the guts, and then the enjoyment of us experiencing it together.
No, that's really cool. There's so much happening in this area that I don't think people realize or give enough credit to outside of the area. I mentioned the last time I was stationed here, and that's actually how I met Katie Kinney. But her and I run this contest together, and we did a live spot for actually Mix 107.7, the radio station. They had the final 5 contestants on. I was still somewhat new to Dayton, but I talked about how great the city was. And I was like, the city, and I had no idea about the nickname for Dayton, but I was like, this city is such a hidden gem. And someone talked about, like, well, it's called Gem City. And I'm like, that makes sense to me, because there's just the proximity to Cincinnati and Columbus and some of the other, but there's just a lot of things that come, like in the whether Cincinnati or Columbus or Dayton itself, there's a lot of events going on. For example, I have my own Foxhole guys, and last year, same thing. It'd been a couple years since we'd seen each other all together, right? It was if we did catch up, it was always just not the whole group. But 2 of my close friends, they flew out from separate parts of the country last year to Dayton, and then we spent the weekend up in Columbus to attend the Arnold Sports Festival, and it was a blast. And we got to meet Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman and Chris Bumstead and just stuff like that. But it was fun. We're just hanging out at the hotel and BSing and watching basketball when we weren't at the expo. But it was just the stories and the camaraderie. And it's like, man, we need to do this again. And we've been talking about actually attending WrestleMania this year in Philadelphia, just to get together.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I love it, man. WrestleMania. My daughter's on a John Cena kick, my youngest one, so we've been watching a lot of John Cena on YouTube. God, I never thought she'd get into that, but it's the best. Just to like sit there and bond and watch this wrestling on YouTube clips. It's the best.
Yeah, and I'm actually in April, I'm taking my daughter up to Columbus because WWE is going to be up there for Raw.
I saw that.
Yeah, so I'm going to take her to that was her big Christmas present. It was just that look on her. She's so excited.
Dude, that's the best. Those are the moments, man. I did that with one of my teenagers to Taylor Swift, and it's one of the best weekends we've had in like ever. Just to get to see her, like, so much excitement leading up to the event, and then it somehow lived up to the expectations, and just to be side by side surrounded by people who loved it, and to see her smile, it brings you to tears, man. It was just the best. It's the best. And so yeah, it was expensive, but man, I love that stuff.
But you're going to spend that money regardless, right? So the tickets probably, if they cost $1,000,
it's part of the reason too, man, why you it's part of the reason that you work really hard. Part of the it is like, so you can turn the work. Really, that's like what money is for me. Is like, I want to work really hard and turn that work into amazing experiences with people I love. That's why we did this. Why are you hosting this kind of concert with a singer? There's no reason for it. There was no event. There was nothing. And I'm like, because I want to turn hard work into an amazing experience with people I love. That's it. There is no ask. There was not a single ask. It was Just show up. Let's have fun and love each other together. And it was the best. Like, it was so cool. And it's like, that's the whole point. It's like, let's turn this work, and the work helps people, obviously, but the money you earned from it into amazing experiences with people you love. Like, I think that's the whole point. I feel like that's the whole point to this whole thing.
Yeah. No, it's great. So I did a play at a local community playhouse here in November of 2022. Never done a theater before. And so I did the play. It was 3 months of rehearsals and all that. But on one of the nights, we did 6 performances, but on one of the nights, I had about like 30 friends from work and coworkers that came to watch and support. And it was just one of the coolest experiences in my life, just to be around like all these. And of course, my wife and my daughter were there, but it was just super fun. So cool. I do have 2 last random questions. Okay. You have a very distinct voice, I was telling my wife earlier that it's very commanding. And your brother looks like a linebacker to me, right? Like when I see your brother, he looks like, I feel like the character Latimer from the program was based on, but
great character.
Yeah, great character, right? Just doing power cleans and throwing the barbell. But anyway, but you have a very distinct voice. And in episode 558 of your podcast with Brook Cupps, you mentioned that you were recently recording parts for the audiobook. And I think at that time it was the first 120 pages of the book.
Yeah.
If a book were to be written about your life, and someone created, and there was an audible version created, who would you want to narrate it?
Well, I would. What do you mean?
Okay, I didn't know. Well, someone else was writing it. Okay, maybe if there was anyone else besides you.
Oh, man.
And it can't be you, Morgan Freeman, or Pat McAfee. None. Those 3 are off the.
Oh, I don't know, man. I guess I haven't thought of that, of a voice that I love. Probably somebody with a cool British accent, so it sounds smart. The person sounds smarter than they actually are. No, I don't know. I have to think about that. I like being the narrator of my life. I like being the narrator of my books. I mean, yeah, there's a connection that I've made with people from talking into a microphone. And so when the audiobook people come around, they're like, do you want us to hire a professional voice actor? I'm like, no, I'm doing it. That's a non-negotiable. So, I just I personally like reading or listening to other people's books if they read it themselves, even if they don't have an amazing voice. Morgan Housel doesn't read his books, and I've told him I think that's a mistake. I think he has a great voice, and I think he has a great way about him, and he has a podcast, and he's one of my favorite writers right now, maybe the top 2 or 3. And I'm like, you should read your own books. You should narrate those things. And I know the voice actor guy is pretty good, but you should do them yourself. And yeah, I think it's cool to kind of be the narrator of your own story, of your own life.
Oh, it's great. Last 2 questions. My favorite NFL quarterbacks of all time are Kurt Warner and Drew Brees. And in my mind, they're the best. I love both those guys. When you were a freshman quarterback at Miami of Ohio, you emailed Drew Brees and asked him for advice on how to be a great quarterback. Mm-hmm. If you were in a similar situation as a young 19-year-old quarterback in 2024, who would you email or direct message today? It can be NFL quarterback or any leaders.
I think Peyton Manning's super interesting because he's really funny, really smart, was a great player, is building an empire beyond his playing days, seems to do a fantastic job of surrounding himself with excellent people at what they do so he can focus on being excellent at what he does, and has completely created, he thought, yeah, I want to do TV, but I also am going to coach my daughter's volleyball team and my son's football team. So I can't be doing the normal broadcaster thing. How about this? I'm going to stay home and do it virtually, and and I want to do it with my best friend, my brother. And so I love people who think like that he is understanding the important things in his life right now. His kids are at that pivotal age, similar to my kids' age, where we don't want to miss these things, but we also don't want to miss out on these cool opportunities. So we're going to find a way. And one of the ways you find a way is to surround yourself with great people. And then when you show up to do the work, though, you have to be world class. You got to be excellent at the work. And he is prepared. He's ready. He's funny. Him and his brother have great banter, like my brother and I do. And so there's so much there that I admire, certainly as a quarterback, because he's the guy who got every rep in practice and loved to prepare and all of that, but takes the same approach to now his business, like Omaha Productions. I mean, that's going to be, it already is a massive, amazing media company, and it's only the beginning. And so he's probably a guy that I would love to learn from because of the fact that he's done amazing things, but done it in a way in which I really admire, that it hasn't cost him his family or the things that are most important in life. So that's probably a person I'd want to talk to.
That's a good one. He's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the banter with him and Eli. I watched.
They're
I watched,
really good.
Yeah, it's entertaining when they bring other guests on, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Last question: if there was a giant billboard with your message on it and I stole this question from Tim Ferriss, but if there's a giant billboard with your message on it for the world to see, where would the billboard be, and what would your message say?
I don't know where I'd put it. The question that I would write on it is a question I've already mentioned: is what did I do today to be a little bit wiser going to bed than I was when I woke up? And if you, because that's it. And if you stack enough of those days with the positive of you document day after day of, I did this, this, and this. I met with this person who's far wiser than me. I did this hard workout. I learned about this specific topic. Like, what did I do today to be a little bit wiser going to bed than I was when I woke up? That compounds over time. And so that's why that would be a prompt, one of the prompts at the top of the list for me is about going to bed a little bit wiser than you were when you woke up.
That's excellent. Ryan, do you have any follow-up questions for me?
Well, I very much appreciate your level of preparation. I think that's the ultimate form of showing love and respect. And so I don't take that for granted. That means a lot. So thanks, Martin, for that. I appreciate that. And this second one should have been first, but I am so in debt to people like you and others who decide the more selfless act of serving our country. I don't take that for granted and try to think about that, especially when I go to sporting events and they play the national anthem. I go to a lot of high school basketball games, Brook Cupps games, and they play the national anthem. I think about guys like you who said, yeah, I'm going to serve my country for 20 plus years, doing some stuff that I can't fully talk about, right, to protect us, the people who just get to go to Speedway and get a big gulp and hang out and do podcasts and write books. Like, dude, we got it easy. We got it easy because of guys like you. And so I just want to publicly say, like, I don't take that for granted. I hope most of us here in our country are grateful for that every single day, because it's not free. Like, it's work. And there's a lot of people that got to sacrifice for this freedom, man. And so I'm grateful for you for not only having done it for the past 20 years and signing up right after 9/11, but that you continue to do it and move all over the world and do crazy stuff. Thank you for that, man. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the kind words. That means a lot. And you're someone, especially since you're someone that I admire. We've never met in person, but I've been following your work for the past year. And again, just for context, I saw the reel of you and Ed Mylett. And then I was reading Todd Henry's book, and I think he talked about you. Then I read The Pursuit of Excellence, and Todd Henry's reference in that book. And it seemed like you were everywhere all of a sudden. And then I found out you were in Dayton. Just thanks for this, and thanks for being so kind, responding to my emails, because you mentioned earlier it is hard. And I reach out to a lot of people. A lot of people don't respond. What's funny is I forget where I saw it, if it was in your newsletter or maybe it was in a book, but you talked about tips. I'm going to send you, if you're interested, I'm going to type up the notes from The Pursuit of Excellence, but I'll also send the notes I had for you, the research for this episode. Because there was even and it's not 100% organized, but it's for the most part, it's organized. I think you'll be able to break it down pretty easy. But at the bottom of it, it talks about your tips for cold emailing. I applied your tips to emailing you, and it worked. So,
all right.
And then lastly, I got to show you my book of guests. because what I do after each episode, this is my all the guests that I'm working on, and I got to put a check mark next. This is my ritual. I put a check mark next to your name.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. That is
Yeah,
so cool.
I don't know how much you could see, but it's 2 pages going across. A
Yeah.
lot of the guests, oddly enough, were people that I read about in the pursuit of excellence.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
Nice.
it's actually that's how I found out about Brook Cupps. Uh,
Yeah. Really?
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I love Brook, man. I'm so grateful for him too. He's the best. You should talk to him again about this work because he just a foxhole guy, the best and so smart too, man. Like yeah, just kind of has some things figured out, and so I really look up to him.
so,
Hmm.
um, and if of anyone that you think would be a good fit for my show, please let me know. Anyone that's interested in being a podcast guest, and I feel like I'm proud of like what I was able to. I've had it for 6 years. Last year was really the where I kind of feel like I took it up another step, and
Hmm.
then 2024 is this is going to be a big year for me. So I just want to
Good.
share that with people.
I love it.
But
Good, man.
but
Good. That's so awesome.
well, hey Ryan, I got to get going. But again, thank you so much for your time. You're incredible. Thanks for being a leader.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Appreciate
All
your
right,
prep.
thanks. Take care. Bye.